always run out of time because people tend to ask great questions, and I just want to make the announcement now. For next month, we are going to have Rick Sanders. He's a blockchain forensics expert and cryptocurrency cybercrime investigator. Laura, my co-partner in this, found him. I don't know much about him, but it sounds pretty cool. Laura can't be here tonight. She's a professor, and this is her first night for her Thursday class. So she said she had to be there today, but she's going to figure it out going forward. And then also, if you haven't received a raffle ticket, I will give you one. RL was nice enough to donate 2 books, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And then anyone who is hungry or wants to come hang out, the Federal Galley is right next door. We tend to go over there and have something to eat, and you're all welcome to stay. Thank you very much for coming. I see a lot of new people, and that made me really happy. So I really appreciate you taking some time to be with us. I'm going to introduce RL. Okay, so probably read this. RL and I met on Twitter. I know it's unbelievable, but yes, that's how we've been friends for about a year, just talking online. Finally got to meet him and appreciate him coming here tonight. He is a Pittsburgh native. He's the author of Blockchain Project Renaissance 1 and 2, which I believe it's been translated to 40 languages?
No, 40 countries.
40 countries, okay, sorry.
It's in 2 languages, Bosnian and Swedish.
Okay.
Other than English, obviously.
He is a partner and faculty at Crypto University, and he has a background in Austrian economics. He's been involved in the Bitcoin space since 2009. Thank you very much, Earl, for coming tonight. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so everybody can see it's titled Bitcoin Sound Money for the Digital Epoch. So a little background on myself. I found Bitcoin in 2009. I was finishing school at Ohio State, and I was just on the internet one day, pretty much how a lot of us have come across it. And I can't remember, to be honest, whether it was an article or a YouTube video. YouTube was pretty much in the infancy at that point, so I'm not quite sure what it was, but I think it was an article. Anyways, I had a friend sleeping on my futon at that point, and he had just moved to town, and he had more of a tech background than myself, so I was looking at it more from an economics point of view. And I looked over to him, and I remember this conversation. Where I was sitting and everything, and I was like, "Do you think this could work?" And he said, I explained it to him, and he said he wasn't sure, and we went back and forth a little bit on it, and a little bit of time passed, and I started getting more into like the political scene. Ron Paul, I was kind of a Ron Paul guy. I started learning about sound. Well, Ron Paul brought so many people into Bitcoin. It's incredible. So I started looking at what he was saying, private property, sound money, the rule of law, and that led me almost right back to Bitcoin about a year later. So I was interested in 2009, but about 2010 is when I really dove completely into it. So I started a crypto podcast or vlog, daily vlog called No Edits Crypto, and I've done like 300 or 400 episodes of that. Kind of got away with that from that a little bit lately because I'm kind of busy. But and right now I do the Transatlantic podcast with my friend in Belarus. He's a crypto MC on YouTube and a bunch of other platforms if you want to find him in BGG. And I just started a new podcast called the Various Numerous Podcasts. I've had some pretty good guests on the first 3 episodes. That one just kicked off last month. I wrote last summer, I wrote for New Privacy Point. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Epic Cash. It's a Mimble project, so I wrote their blog for like 6 months last summer. There's like 75 articles I wrote for them. They're all over at epic.tech if you want to check those out. And so Bryer.io is my new site. All of my work, featured articles, and stuff's over there. And if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at rbryer23. So like I said, I found Ron Paul. I started working for his campaign a little bit. And that was like my conversion process into the Austrian School of Economics. I started reading all the greats of the Austrian School, like the masters of the Austrian School, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Murray Rothbard, all of those guys. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Mises Institute. I'm sure a few of you guys are, but it's in Auburn, Alabama. That's like the home of Austrian economics now. Lou Rockwell founded that in 1982, and I can't remember the exact number of faculty they have, but they have a few, I think 130 or something. I don't know the exact number, but yeah, anyway, it was named after Lou Mises, and he wrote Human Action, and that's one of the most important economics books I think that's ever been written. Because called it Human Action because economics is the science of human action. So this is really integral into the early days of Bitcoin. So yeah, I started reading all these greats, and then I came to Murray Rothbard, who's like my sensei, I guess. He wrote Man, Economy, and State with Power and Market, and I think that's probably the most influential book on me. It really like set that light bulb off, and just talking about private property really. And, today our private property is basically at the whim of the state. So I view Bitcoin as a way to combat that. So how do we basically get into this situation we're in with money? It's pretty interesting. I think Federal Reserve and central banks. The origins of the Fed, 6 men met on Jekyll Island in 1910, and they basically hashed a plan to debase the money over time and steal, productivity of the people or purchasing power. So that's basically how we got to the point we are today. And in 1913, that's when the Fed was actually enacted. Took a little bit of time, but in 1971, the United States left the gold standard. There was supposed to be a temporary reprieve, but it wasn't. And it's been a 50-year reprieve at this point. So, 49 years. So we went from the world's wealthiest nation to the world's, in my opinion, the world's poorest nation in 50 years. I mean, debt is a lack of money, so we can't even pay our bills today in the United States. We can't pay the interest on the debt. So they've basically hashed a plan through quantitative easing to steal the purchasing power of the people and export the debt to other nations. You can see here in 1970, we had a $371 billion national debt, and today, this is the third quarter of last year, 22.719 trillion, and that's just, that's the nominal. That doesn't include inflation, there's a ton of things that aren't included in that. So there's a professor of economics, he's coming on my podcast next week from Duquesne, Anthony Davies. He says, I was watching a lecture with him last month, and he said that the actual number is closer to 150 trillion just in the United States. So it's pretty remarkable how fast we fell without the gold standard. Gold, that's when they stopped honoring the price of gold. When that happened, gold was $35 an ounce, and today it's $1,580 an ounce. So you can see the steep decline in what the dollar will buy. A lot of people go to the store and they say, "Why is my money not going as far today?" Well, you can't just put pieces of paper into the economy without the actual production rate being, it has to be backed by something. And pieces of paper don't make a society richer, they make it poorer. So the financial crisis in 2008 is an example of this all culminating. The housing market collapsed. Banks are basically predatory lenders, so they were lending, houses to people they knew had no chance of paying them off. They zero down, non-fixed, so after a couple of years of owning a house, the bank was going to take the house from you. The bailouts, they bailed out the people that caused the problem, and reluctance, Mises calls it malinvestments, so they didn't want to liquidate the debt. They should have just let these people fail. Instead, they encouraged it to get worse and kick the problem down the road. And this is all going to have a terrible outcome here whenever it comes to light. And it's important people today in the United States and all over the world are like scapegoating capitalism. But we haven't had capitalism. This is cronyism. It's capitalism is profit and loss. These companies that went bust should have failed. And somebody else would have came in and put that capital to work. By the numbers, over the last, Gold, there's $7.7 trillion worth of gold in the economy, 73 trillion of value in global stocks, 127 trillion in money, coins, notes, checking savings, 215 trillion in debt growing, 217 trillion in global real estate, 1.2 quadrillion in derivatives, and right now there's just 155. This was put this together a few days ago, so it might be 160 today. The market went up, but like $155 billion in Bitcoin. So I think a lot of people are going to take their money in this coming decade and move it into Bitcoin. What is a monopoly? Really, a monopoly is a government grant of privilege. They don't teach you that in public schools, but if you study hard enough, you'll figure that out. Today, they want to tell you that a monopoly is just a corporation that runs amok, but really, it's not. A monopoly can't exist without the government, so they're really the ones to blame. So a group of people came along in the 80s and 90s, and they were called the cypherpunks. There's a list of these guys that they were known to get together, and they started an email chain and collaborated for a while on that. I don't think they're together anymore, but they would get, once in a while they would meet just like this, people getting together, sharing their opinions on things. And some of the instrumental people were Nick Szabo. He's a computer scientist, legal scholar. He created Bitgold, which is like the precursor to Bitcoin, but it was never actually launched. He said he didn't get it coded up right. So he's like, a lot of people think he's Satoshi Nakamoto. Also, Hal Finney, which a lot of other people think is Satoshi Nakamoto. He created the proof of work system that Bitcoin uses today, and he was the first recipient of Bitcoin. So a lot of people think those two are maybe the ones who created Bitcoin. David Chaum's also a pioneer of cryptography. He's done a lot of important work, and he created DigiCash and is working right now on quantum-resistant blockchain. So I think that's pretty interesting. I don't fear quantum computing, like breaking the blockchain, but it's good to get ahead of it, So Bitcoin to the rescue. 2008, the white paper was released. January 3rd, 2009, the network actually launched. Immediate interest. People across the world that had a lot of knowledge in these areas immediately determined that this could work. Once they got into the code and started looking at everything, works on network consensus to confirm transactions. Like I said, proof of work, which is a system or protocol consensus mechanism. And the major breakthrough of proof of work was that it solved the Byzantine generals problem, which obviously dates back to the Byzantine Empire, but applied to computer science. The Byzantine Empire, they had generals that had to figure out a way to get messages across their empire without being intercepted. So that was important, and that was the reason Bitcoin succeeded, and a lot of these other precursors to it didn't. Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, everybody knows his name. He's probably here today. Nobody knows who he was, but he was a polymath. He took all of these things and put them together. Really, it's pretty amazing to me that he was able to do all of this stuff. He had the knowledge of, the background. Obviously, a super genius. Game theory, computer science, and in my opinion, it really doesn't matter who he is. A lot of people want to know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but to me, it's pretty irrelevant. The problems that Bitcoin solved, the major problem is trust, so we can, exchange without a third-party intermediary. That's where banks and such, this is a real problem with those things, is that they all rely on trust. Bitcoin is trust minimized. I'm not sure the exact number of nodes that are running full nodes across the world now, but there's nodes all over the world. So even if, in theory, a nuclear bomb went off, there's a really good chance that Bitcoin would survive, because all you need is one person to keep running Bitcoin across the world, and the chain survives. So the human error, like I said, of central banks in the state. Greed is pretty prominent today across the world. The majority of central banks have their countries pretty far in debt, and they're not stopping. They just installed the next what do you want to call it, QE4, but they're not calling it QE4, so quantitative easing number 4. This is all going to end really bad, so you might want to look into Bitcoin a little more if you're not already pretty deep into it. So yeah, central banks have led us into a lot of turmoil. They borrow the money, so the money is borrowed and created out of debt. So the idea that you could actually print more money to pay yourself out of the hole is completely erroneous. You could never print yourself into prosperity. So just pretty upset about that. So yeah, like I said earlier, the non-money goods have to be produced to actually give currency value, increasing the paper supply by money. Only steals purchasing power, brutalizes the wealth of nations or savers, and inflates the supply overall. Interest rates world over, some places are 0, negative. Then you want to, when you really get into cryptocurrency, I know a lot of people are already into cryptocurrency here, but best thing to do is look at good, bad projects. How do you decipher those? Centralization versus decentralization. Token economics, you look at supply and demand. Bitcoin, for example, has 21 million finance supply. Automatically, that there's a cap on the number of Bitcoin that can be created, unlike the dollar, which most people have no clue how many dollars are in circulation right now. I'm not sure if the government has any idea how many dollars are in circulation right now. But yeah, so token economics is really one of the more important things because that kind of drives people to a project, in my opinion. I mean, there are some projects like Ethereum that aren't capped, but even Ethereum is talking about capping their supply, so I think that's super important to success of the project. The devs obviously look at the people who are developing the project. They want to get into a project where you have people skipping from one project to another, sort of like I have here. Talk about XRP and Stellar. Jed and Caleb is an example of that. He just creates one project and bounces to the next. It's also a good example of XRP being very centralized, so Stellar. Security of the network, that goes back to the nodes and people running full nodes and stuff that actually keep the project decentralized. So the more decentralized the project, the more nodes that are running across the world, the secure the project is. Privacy, I think privacy is going to be super important. Crypto, we're 11 years in now. That's why I took that opportunity to write for that Epic Cash last summer, because I think privacy is an essential human freedom. So in the future, privacy coins are going to be very big, and I think the next 5 years, something like that, we should definitely see a privacy coin and make it into the top 5. And scalability is another way to determine a good project. Looking at it, you think it's scalable. Obviously, you want to be something that's scalable, especially if you're using it as a medium of exchange. Definitely want to make sure of that. That's why there's all these. I look at Bitcoin as the king. Bitcoin's working on the 2nd and 3rd layer scaling now. One example of that's the Lightning Network, which has made payments a little bit easier. There's a lot of debate whether the Lightning Network is a good or bad thing, but because it doesn't settle transactions on chain. So some people prefer Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash or another cryptocurrency for that, and they hold the Bitcoin as a store of value. Remittance, so this is another thing that I think is super important and will emerge as a big factor in why the cryptocurrency market, blockchain market, will be a lot bigger in the coming years. Bitcoin, in my opinion, creates free markets. It's, like I said, it's a tool for private property, and remittance is definitely going to be an important factor in this. So people in Venezuela or across Africa, they might go somewhere to work, and then they send their money back to their homeland, the country they grew up in, whatever, where their family is. Maybe they're just across the border for a little bit working. Remittance really, they get crushed with that. They send a wire somewhere. In Africa, especially, like 50% of the wire you're sending can be eaten up in fees, or you pay 50% of that fee. So in fees. So I think that's definitely going to be huge in the future. I mean, 50% of the money, that can go a long way to wherever they're sending it, and that can go into something else that frees people up even more, lifts them out of poverty. To interoperability, this is another thing that I think is going to be huge in this decade. Communication between blockchains is basically what interoperability is. It's the ability for them to communicate and talk to one another. And I think this is going to be like the true rise of the blockchain economy. Today, there are people that say that they're Bitcoin maximalist or they're this maximalist or whatever. They don't want to be. They have a chain and that's their chain. To me, that's just. It's really not, it's like clinging on to fiat to me, it's like tribalism. So I don't think that that's going to be the future. I think there'll be like a future that emerges with like 15 to 20, 25 solid blockchain projects, and then these projects communicate with one another, and then that's really where the value comes, the utility out of these. So I'm really excited about that. I think, there's some that are in the top 25 now that will remain, and then there's others that haven't even been created yet. So, security, I think this is going to be big. Today, you buy a new car and you can actually hack it. So I don't know if you guys know that. A lot of cars today are actually hackable. And I think that's going to be a really important thing as well. If you want to make sure that you're not driving down the road 75 miles an hour and you say something wrong, or whoever can turn the steering wheel off. So I think that might be important. Also supply chain, so people are going to use Bitcoin, other blockchains to track produce, food, whatever, from seed to checkout. So you'll be able to track everything basically. And then Web 3.0, everything's going to be connected soon. So no matter what you are working on, I think most of it's going to run on the blockchain, and everything's going to be connected. Economic growth, I think there's going to be a massive change in production, so the ability to get the levels not seen since maybe the Industrial Revolution or ever. I think this is our real opportunity to see, really actually create more wealth than has ever been created, and have a prosperous, peaceful society. As we all know, the wealthier a society is, the less dangerous it is, and I think that's definitely going to have an impact. Bitcoin and the rest of those 20 or whatever that people just aren't speculating on will definitely have an impact on it. Education, so this is also important to me. More economic growth equals better education, less reliance on state education increases the breadth of education. I think that today there's a lack of education overall. Most people will go to public schools. The quality is super low because there's no competition, and that's just like any other education is like any other good. There has to be an abundance of options, or the quality just goes down and the price goes up. So that's just basic free market economics. I think there's a good chance that in the future, blockchains, there's going to be a lot of education on blockchains, and the opportunity to provide good education, a solid education across the world at a super cheap rate on a blockchain. That can be done in a number of ways, but that's going to definitely happen, and it's going to increase wealth all over the world. So is Bitcoin sound money? I believe it is. This is an argument that a lot of different people, a lot of scholars in economics in the world have. Aristotle had his characteristics of good money, and they were scarcity, portability, divisibility, and intrinsic value. And like I said, Bitcoin has 21 million. There's going to be a finite supply of 21 million Bitcoin ever created. And it's highly portable. It's the most portable money in the history of the world. It's also highly divisible. It's divisible up to 8 decimal places. So anybody who thinks that you got to buy a whole Bitcoin to get into the space, you can buy you can dollar cost average in DCA, and you can buy $5 if you want to or something. So it's good. The divisibility is obviously there, and intrinsic value. I honestly don't believe in intrinsic value. I think all value, this is like something that I studied more on, but I think all value is subjective, so it's in the eye of the valuer. I think it's really a myth that there's intrinsic value in anything. So that's another argument. It's a little bit more deep, but yeah, I don't really believe in intrinsic value myth. Why fiat isn't sound money, I kind of already went over that. It lacks trust. There's people in charge of it, and people can't always be trusted. Bitcoin is based on math. Outside of the few people that are developing it, you can argue that is a problem, just like anything else. But at least you can get in there. It's open source. You can check the code. You can see how many exist at any time. 21 million, and I think that's a lot safer route than storing the wealth of fiat that has been the U.S. dollar's depreciated like 97, 98% in the last 100 years. So if you held on to the dollar over that period of time, you're going to get a lot less for it. Time preference. So this is an exciting time. People are actually saving money again, putting the money into something they think is going to have value in the future, and that's really what this renaissance, I call it, or revolution is about. People actually saving money again. Fiat encourages short-term orientation. So this is, if you're smart enough to figure out that your money is not going to be worth anything in the future, you're going to spend it faster, right? So Bitcoin encourages long-term orientation. It encourages you to look at the future. What comes from that? Obviously, starting a business. You save your money, you get a nice return on it, and I think last decade Bitcoin went up over 130x. I don't know what it was. It's an incredible amount. So you take all that capital, you put it back into the economy, you put people to work. Just seems like a no-brainer. Free trade, import to export, without the government. This is. You take away their power to really just base the money, and you put it in the hands of the individuals across the world. This breaks the Keynesian desire of present to future goods. The cost of present-day consumption is a vast reduction in future consumption. Privacy, like I said, it's essential to freedom, so privacy coins are going to be huge in the future. Mimblewimble is one of the protocols that is big in this, and Charlie Lee of Litecoin is talking about adding that on. So I think I love that he's talking about doing that. I think it really adds a little use case for Litecoin, so I'm hoping he does that. And that's that project I worked on last summer also. That was the main reason I went over there is because they're working on Mimblewimble, and I like the privacy. Fungibility. Bitcoin, one of the things that I will say about Bitcoin that I'm not a huge fan of is the fungibility problem. Right now, if you hold your money, really is only a problem in third-party situations. If you had your money on exchange, you could actually have it seized. You took a tainted coin. So that's a problem, but nothing's perfect. I guess this is just really, beats home the point that you're in control of your own money, your own bank these days. There's no way to seize it if you have it in your pocket, on a ledger, or if you have some sort of hardware wallet or your paper wallet where you've actually backed up your keys on paper, made a physical, tangible object. And then talk about Eric Hughes here. He's one of these original guys, and he wrote the Cypherpunk Manifesto. I'm not going to read the whole thing if you guys want to read that real fast. The key point is the third paragraph, really, that we cannot expect governments, corporations, or other large faceless organizations to grant us privacy out of beneficence. It is to their advantage to speak of us beneficence, and we should expect that they will speak to try to prevent their speech is to fight against the realities of information. Information does not want to be free, it longs to be free. Information expands to fill the available storage space. Information is rumor's younger, stronger cousin. Information is fleeter of foot, has more eyes, knows more, and understands less than rumor. So I think that really speaks for itself. This is another one of the guys that paved the way for what we have today. The fruits of our labor belong to us, as I've been talking about throughout this. You can tell that's important to me. Keeping and exiting the state with our property. So today in the United States, wherever you go across the world, tax rates are high, and if you leave with a lot of wealth, if you're a rich person, you want to leave the country, you pay a huge exit tax. And I don't agree with this at all. If you're taxed on the initial income that you pay, I don't understand why they have to take your money again when you try to leave. So this is really just a way to get you to stay in the country, in my opinion. I'm a proponent of a private law society. I see this as the way to get us there. All this, Bitcoin, blockchain, all these different chains provide utility. So states over the last century alone, they killed over 400 million people. It's called democide. So I think there's definitely a more voluntary, peaceful way to cooperate as individuals. I don't think there needs to be people in charge. And capitalism, like I said earlier, capitalism is voluntary exchange, and it really can't exist with the state because of coercion. So automatically, with the state, you're ripping off true capitalism. Venezuela as a use case, Venezuela is obviously in turmoil right now. They're suffering from hyperinflation. It's just one of the places across the world. Why is this needed? Why is Bitcoin needed? The failure of the state. Greedy people got in charge. They debased the currency, and these people were like eating out of dumpsters. So if you look at Venezuela, there's hundreds of places now taking cryptocurrency. Dash is really big there. Dash digital cash. A lot of people are familiar with Dash, but it has a lot of utility there. But a lot of people are setting up businesses and taking payment there. Saving lives. People are mining on the state power grid there, which I guess would be one aspect of the state, which they're kind of giving it back to the state. Maybe it will collapse faster there. I don't know. So that's, they're mining and they're able to actually store some value. A lot of people are familiar with the Weimar Republic and what happened there. So overnight, basically, the money was worthless, and they were carrying, rolling around wheelbarrows full of money trying to buy a loaf of bread. So I really think that's the end game in a lot of these places. Pretty much everywhere you look, all these states are in trillions of dollars of debt. First decade of Bitcoin, obviously there were a lot of doubts. There was the $10,000 Bitcoin pizza, and a lot of people didn't know whether it would work or not. Obviously, if those people knew that it was going to work, they would have held on to those 10,000 Bitcoins. But they're really, benefactors of us all that are here today. Without them, this wouldn't work. So we needed these people to get out there, the early foot soldiers, and people like Ross Ulbricht, who's actually been, he's just got double life in 40 years. He's been in prison for 6 or 7 years. I'm not sure the exact number, but he was the creator of the Silk Road, and he created basically an online black market empire. He made a lot of money, and the government didn't like that. He was providing a free market place to get whatever people wanted. So they threw him in jail, made an example out of him in prison. Game theory, though, actually, encourages states to embrace Bitcoin. So they try, all these people, all these different entities, banks, corporations, the government, all wanted to kill Bitcoin. You hear how many Bitcoin obituaries have been written. You spend like weeks and months reading all those probably, but they weren't successful. And now they have to deal with it, So game theory really says that these, the states that don't get on board are going to be left behind. So this is like the internet in 1990. If you're not on board, if these countries aren't on board, they're going to be, they're not going to have much of a place at the table in the future. So I really think that they have to embrace it at this point. In my opinion, we've sort of won in that regard. This is a quick picture here I wanted to show. This is 2012. Just shows how far we've come. The market cap was 51.3 million, and the price was $6.26. 2020 is where are we heading? Like I said, I see a future of like 20 proprietary chains. Proprietary just chains that are their own blockchain, talking to one another. Different functions. I think they're all going to have different use cases. This is what gives them value. And then you're going to have this asset class which continues to expand. So Bitcoin today has like $160 billion market cap. That's nothing. I think it's just going to keep rising. And then trillions of dollars are going to flood in across the world. I think Bitcoin eats up nation-state currency after currency. Today it's 8th, I believe, ahead of, this is, like I said, I made some of these slides last week, so we're already $500 or $600 ahead of where we were last week when I made this. So the price today is around 95.40, I think, when I got up here. And it's already larger than Russia's monetary base. So why is this revolution inevitable? There's all of these different factors, but the Lindy effect, which is a theory that the future life expectancy of a non-perishable thing like a tech is proportional to the current age. So basically, with every block that is mined, it grows. The probability of it lasting grows, exponentially. So 11 years in, I think the future is super bright. I don't really see anyone breaking Bitcoin. Moore's law, a lot of people know about Moore's law. Refers to Moore's perception that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years. So this is why we're going to see more and more full nodes being run across the world too. So there's already cell phones you can download the entire Bitcoin blockchain and carry it in your pocket. So you have the entire ledger, every transaction that's ever been done in your pocket. And then Metcalfe's law, the states and networks value is proportional to the square of the number of its users. So as the number of people in Bitcoin grow, it obviously becomes more valuable. And then this is a picture of the virus as it's spreading. This was last week on the 22nd. There's 15,896 places in the world that have are accepting Bitcoin or having ATMs. So. And then smart contracts, I think smart contracts are going to be pretty important as well. For predefined roles. Nick Szabo was the first to come up with that idea. His example that he uses is like putting $1 and $1 in a vending machine and you get a Coca-Cola out of it. This is a predefined set of roles. So, today, we don't have a great, smart contracts have been kind of underwhelming. This is what Ethereum is working on. This is also what Chainlink's working on. They're setting up this thing, they call it an oracle, which is going to be a way for smart contracts to actually execute the way they're supposed to execute. Right now, there's no way for externally, in real time, if something within that contract needs to change for it really to change. So this is the interoperability I was talking about too. All these things talk with one another. These are obviously all going to increase the rate of adoption as all of these things provide more utility. This is sort of just for fun, a price prediction that I think is definitely plausible. And I don't want to be accountable for anyone's investments. I'm not a financial advisor, but this is just something fun to look at. If Bitcoin, went to a $2 trillion market cap, which I think is very likely in the next decade, I think it will actually blow past that. But this is, like I said, a conservative estimate. That's $250,000 per Bitcoin. So there's obviously a long way to go from here. And all you have to do is look at the market cap of gold, which I showed before, which is 7.8 trillion. If Bitcoin went to 25% of that, $2 trillion, it's a $250,000 Bitcoin. If it goes to half, it's $500,000. I really think, as the millennial generation and the generation to come move in, this one. The wealth, money's going to start flowing into millennial hands, and they're not buying gold. They don't want to store fiat. Grew up, I'm a millennial. I grew up in the internet era, the digital era. I just don't see as many people that are going to want to hold fiat or a gold bar. Although I still think gold has a case, like in store value. I think it's a good store value over time. I think it's definitely something to hold on to, but it's just not as good as gold, or not as good as Bitcoin. And then during this decade, we're going to see, this is really what drives the, some people think we might see a super cycle this time around where we see $250,000 in the next 2 or 3 years. I think the bull market we're in now is going to last at least until the beginning of 2022. But If it doesn't, it doesn't. But over the next decade, we're gonna have 3 halvings, including this one coming up. So the scarcity, the inflation rate of Bitcoin is all built into the protocol. So we're gonna go from 1,800 a day Bitcoin mine to 900 to 450 in the 4th halving, and then in the 5th halving, will only be 225 new Bitcoin created every single day. So in conclusion, this is just wrapping up here. I've got my books available if anyone wants to check those out. Check out my podcast, Areas of Numerous, on Bryer.io, YouTube, Anchor. It's on like 8 platforms, Google Podcast, a lot of stuff. I've got some pretty generous guests coming on next month. And all my featured articles are on there. I'm writing my 3rd book now. It's on Bitcoin. Like I said, a lot of macros, but I want to get more in depth on this next book, so I'm going to write just on one subject this time. And yeah, those are the books right there. They're also available in the store on Bryer.io. So, but if I brought the hard copies here, so those are the QRs if anybody wants them. That's it. If anybody has any questions.